Solo, I can't hear you. I heard that. It wouldn't be much of a video if we were both quiet.
No, but it would be just as long.
Well, it would still be a video, just there wouldn't be any audio.
Yes. It would be just as much of a video.
Me.
It would just be less of an audio video, but it'd still be a video. Not sure how that works.
Some people might like it better.
Yeah.
All right, so
Maybe
we are.
some soothing music in the background.
Yeah, there you go. We need to play that Psalm song that I like so much, where they bash the babies against the rocks and stuff.
I was going to ask, but I didn't want to be the one that said that.
Yes. Well, won't that be fun when we get to that? I mean, when we get to the Psalms and talk about there are some disturbing images
very
in places in the
frightening.
Right.
So what do we have today?
We have a prayer topic.
Yes. We're talking about prayer again?
Yes, I heard. But we have a topic today as opposed to a prayer. So we'll look at our topic. And we're kind of looking today at, it's kind of a combination topic of things. We've been talking about things to pray for.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things, obviously, that we should pray for is a better knowledge of God. We want to know Him better.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand Him better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, as human beings, we'll never fully understand God, but we want to understand as much as He's revealed to us about Himself, as much as we can. And we also want to, in connection with that, we want to talk to, and whether we get to that in today's or not, we'll see. But we also want to talk about how that's going to affect our prayer life when we get to know Him better, when we know about Him. And, the how, the why, all of that presented together. So, a failure to understand who God is causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So it's definitely important that we know who He is. And of course we need to be praying for that. And the thing that got us started thinking about, well, I mean, we thought about it already, but the one the prayer that we looked at in Exodus 33,
mm-hmm.
where Moses actually asks him, show me your ways. If I found favor in your sight, show me your ways.
Yep.
And so that kind of goes, well, we really need to talk about, so we didn't with that situation in that prayer, we really need to talk about getting to know God better and praying to get to know Him better. And one of the problems with that is, people sometimes think, well, if I pray for God to reveal Himself, He's just going to do it miraculously, or some would say magically. And that in some way He's going to enlighten my mind, mm-hmm. and I'm just going to suddenly know Him better.
And so then they either get themselves stuck in a situation where, oh, well, I know God now because I prayed about it. And, what was the one I mentioned at one point on this? And I saw Jesus in my pancake syrup. And so now I know everything I need to know. And your mind kind of just tricks you into thinking something along those lines. Or the miraculous thing doesn't happen, and then you're like, well, God must not be listening to me, or religion is a waste of time, and bye.
Or I just can't know anything else about Him. I already know everything else. And the fact of the matter is, neither of those are accurate.
Yes.
And they'll cause problems. So as we think about asking God for a better knowledge, this will kind of lead into some other things that we'll talk about in another lesson too. It kind of goes hand in hand with, well, how do we learn about God then? If He's not going to just, if it's not going to say, Lord, we want, show me your ways, mm-hmm. and He doesn't put up a PowerPoint presentation or, give us a vision of it, then how do we get to know his ways? How do we get to know him? And of course,
We don't. No.
we said that was the bad idea. That was the wrong idea.
Well, we have to get past the bad ideas
We already got
first.
past that.
Fine. Sometimes they pop back up, though.
That's true.
So be careful for that, because you may be like, well, dealt with that issue, never have to deal with it again. Now I know better. And then, 6 months later, it's back.
Yeah.
So, and watch out for that. Not just in prayer, but really in everything in life,
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, we've dealt with this. We know better. Now we can move on. And then,
then we wind up back in the same place,
Yeah.
doing the same thing. Yeah.
humans in general have a really bad habit of not learning from our mistakes, even when we think we do.
Yeah. Historically, that has been a problem.
Yes.
So the psalmist in Psalm 25, in verse 4, says, "Make me to know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation."
Now, let me ask a question here real quick. When somebody teaches you something, that means that you have one lesson, you go to bed that night, and then you wake up in the morning and you automatically know everything about that subject because they taught you about it, right?
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
always the way
Okay.
that works.
Glad we've got that
Yeah.
cleared up. And what doesn't it also mean that, when somebody teaches you something, that you have the one lesson, and then there's never anything else you can ever learn about that
Yeah.
ever again?
Yeah. I mean, somebody, in fact, when we kind of advertised for these on Facebook, that we were going to be having these lessons, and somebody was just like, "That's so sad." I said, what's wrong? And they said, "Well, that you teach lessons on prayer, because when I became a Christian, God taught me to pray, and I know how to do it now." Okay, well, happy for you. I guess you know it all. Maybe you should be teaching the lessons then.
Have a nice life.
The problem is, a lot of times when we think we know, we don't really know.
I actually did a Devo on this fairly recently. I've been reading through Proverbs, a chapter a day, and one of the ones in there said something along the lines of, the way of a man seems right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart.
Yeah.
And it was talking about how, you may think you're working for God, you may think that He's helping you and that you've got it all figured out, but that may only be the path that you think you're on.
I think there's another one in Proverbs that says, "The way of a man seems right in his own eyes, but the end thereof is death."
Yes.
So I think that's also Proverbs.
Yes, that sounds about right.
So we think we know.
Mm-hmm.
We think we've got the answers, and we sometimes don't. And so in the same way, well, I've been a Christian for 30 years or 50 years or whatever, and I know God. We know what we think that we know.
Yeah.
But our vision of God may be a little distorted.
Mm-hmm.
He may not be what we think he is. And I mean, the chances are really good that he's not what we think he is.
Yeah, because, we're only human and we can't really comprehend the way he works.
But there are several things there in Psalm 25. When we think about wanting to get to know God better, he talks about, "You're the God of my salvation." And in verse 6, he says, "Remember your mercy." So we need to get to know God's mercy. Your steadfast love. We want to know that about God. And then he talks about your goodness, and don't remember the sins of my youth. So he talks about forgiveness there too, mercy and grace and forgiveness. And the goodness of God. And there are a lot of things. Paul talks about the goodness and severity of God. There are a lot of attributes of God that we think of as positive.
Mm-hmm.
Loving, kind, merciful, and all that. And then there are others that we think of as negative.
Yeah.
Like we think of his wrath and his jealousy and those kind of things. And so, but Paul talks about we need the balance of both of those.
And part of that is with God, those attributes aren't negative because he is the only one holy enough, righteous enough, correct enough to be able to wield those negative attributes properly. And so we see those things as bad because when a human gets jealous or angry or anything,
vengeful,
bad things happen.
Yeah.
But when God is jealous and angry and vengeful, bad things may happen.
Bad things happen to those people that are on the wrong side.
But even though the bad things happen, they are still
good
and right, which is really hard for us to wrap our heads around. And once we do wrap our heads around it, it's hard for us to accept that, okay, that is the way that is.
Yeah, but there definitely are. Yeah. So when we think about getting to know God better, we don't want to just focus on one thing, one aspect of his character. We want to get to know everything we can about him, all of the different attributes of God, and there are a lot of them.
He is a complicated individual.
Yeah, I mean, you think about getting to know another human being and how hard that is to get to know that person, how much they will still surprise you sometimes, no matter how much you think you know them. Still sometimes.
You can learn everything there is to know about their ways in a month, but still after 70 years they can manage to surprise you.
Thank you, Gandalf.
You're welcome.
That's probably a good place for us to. God is more complicated than hobbits. That's I think safe to say.
We'll just title this episode that.
God is more complicated than hobbits. There you go. But that is something we need to think about and we need to pray about. But then not just pray about it, but actually follow through. Study God's word to see what he has revealed about himself, about all of these different attributes. And that will help us to know him better. And we'll look in the next time that we're on a topic, we'll look at how that's going to affect things there.
Yes.
Because
that is
what we know or don't know about God is going to make an impact in all of our Christian life, but
beyond just prayer.
Yeah, but in our prayer life as well. So, well, hope that this has encouraged you to get to know God better. Do not think you know him well enough.
No matter what you think about him, whether you think he exists, doesn't exist, is terrible,
is wonderful,
has nothing to do with the world, it just sits back and does nothing. No matter what you think
miracles every day, whatever you're thinking.
No matter what you think about God.
I remember. You remember in Fireproof when he talks. His dad gives him the book about studying his wife to get to know her better. And I think about that with our relationship with God. He said at one point, he said, "Well, do you if you got your college degree yet?" Sometimes we are satisfied with a kindergarten level understanding of God, and yet we need to continue studying on through a high school education and a college degree and a master's degree and a doctorate. We want to know everything that we can about God.
I also want to be clear here that this does not mean that you should go back to college and get a doctorate in theology.
No, that might not. It's amazing how little you learn about God studying theology. If you want to know God, read what he wrote instead of what other people wrote. But that's not to say that nobody else can benefit you, but really, he's revealed some things about himself, and we need to study those things and get to know him better and better every day.
Anyway, this has been another prayer study.
Yep.
Hope it was helpful to you. Hope that you learned something remembered something. And
We'll be back in Deuteronomy tomorrow.
yes, and I hope that you will be here for that.
Bye.